About 9 months after the release of the base game, Watch Dogs Legion's DLC is finally out, and it is so much better than Legion. The Watch Dogs Legion Bloodline DLC was pretty hyped in the Watch Dogs fanbase. It was announced before the game was even released that you could play as Watch Dogs Aiden Pierce and Watch Dogs 2's Wrench. I think the best place to start is what makes a good DLC. A good DLC should be an expansion of the franchise or game. It should offer new gameplay experiences or features, or it should offer an entirely new story. Watch Dogs Legion was in a really unique situation. There couldn't really be a DLC to the game where there are no characters. 99% of the game is compiled out of randomly generated characters that are different for everyone who owns the game. The other 1% of characters are totally shit and uninteresting, and really not worth making a DLC out of. So Ubisoft, for once in their existence, made a good decision. They realised that everyone hates Legion and used characters from the 2 Watch Dogs games that were actually good. Characters that have personalities and whose voices aren't randomly generated. So does Bloodline fit the criteria for a good DLC? To answer that, I must ask you a question. Are you prepared to waste your precious time listening to me break down every detail of this DLC to determine whether or not it's a worthy expansion? Hopefully you said yes, because if not, I've wasted my time making this video. The story in this DLC is pretty solid. It's not anything incredible, not at all, but it met my expectations for a Ubisoft game, and it's so much better than the base game storyline. So Aiden Pierce went to London on a job for some of that cheddar. Also, his nephew Jackson is now residing in London, so Aiden wants to go see him, I guess. You put into a standard tutorial level, introduces the player to hacking, that pretty much boils down to pressing the left bumper, then another button, or for those who are on PlayStation, like button C35, then press rhombus. In this level, you're introduced to the big villain lad, Thomas Rampart. You go to get an Apple AirTag, but oh no, it's floating, as most people would. Aiden grabs his gun and shoots it, then out pops Wrench. Basically, you chase him down, fail, and then get arrested by Rampart's goons. The big lad himself tortures you and gives the most generic villain speech I think I've ever heard in my life. Wrench saves you using his Ring doorbell cameras and some epic hacking. For the rest of the Aiden bit, you try to find Wrench, because Tommy really wants the Apple AirTag that I mentioned. Alongside this, Aiden bonds with Jackson. After about 2 to 5 hours, depending on how many side missions you do, you get to the climax of the story, in which Jackson is kidnapped by Tommy. You fight your way through robots and guards until you reach Jackson and Tommy. Aiden, in the previous cutscene, had retrieved the AirTag from Wrench to give to Tommy. Surprise, it was a bomb, oh no. Rampart gets half his face blown off. Wrench made a bomb that looks like the Broker Bridge thing, and kept the real one. Big brain play. Just when it looks like Aiden's going to escape with his nephew, someone shoots at Jackson, but Aiden steps in front of the bullet and fucking dies. He's actually just in a coma. It's here where you switch over to Wrench, arguably the better half of the game. It's not exactly half, it's more like a 60-40 split to Aiden. So Wrench runs about London trying to find ways to save Aiden, like stealing files from hospitals and shit, until Sky Larson approaches you and like, hey man, I can help Aiden, no bother. Wrench and Jackson go to meet Sky. When they arrive, Sky tells them they're just guinea pigs for some mind-entering shit that she's making. Wrench is like, nah mate, and then Jackson's like, yeah sure, why not. I think Ubisoft took on board how much people like Sky Larson's character in the main game, so they brought her back. And by the way, everything that happens in this DLC is set before the events of Legion. Anyway, Jackson goes into Aiden's mind, and you get to play as him, which I found pretty neat. It's only for about 20 minutes, but Ubisoft actually included it. Well done Ubisoft. This whole section is actually pretty trippy and interesting. It adds a lot more to Aiden's character, and there's actually some disturbing moments. And Aiden's character model in this bit is really bad. It barely looks like him. So Jackson gets Aiden to wake up with a heartfelt monologue and family shit. And the big battle bit at the end is Wrench taking on Rampart. The mission was actually quite difficult until the big boss battle with the big Tommy robot. For some reason, the boss battle is so easy and underwhelming, I thought it was a joke. As I said, the story isn't amazing. I would go as far to say it's just passable. There's lots of wasted potential, like not having Tommy in it more, because he only shows up in like 3 cutscenes and you learn like nothing about his character. Personally, I would have been fine with Sky Larson being the main villain, because as I said in my Legion reviews, she is a pretty compelling villain. Probably one of, if not the best villain in the Watch Dogs franchise. Wrench was pretty underutilised too. Even with all his side missions, he only takes up about 35 to 40% of the whole DLC, which is a bit of a shame. If they had some more character development, that would have been nice. The closest thing we'll get to character development is some voicemails in the safe house from Marcus. the main geezer from the second game. The story is really Aiden oriented, which I don't mind because I love the character and it was really nice to see him come back. Let's begin with innovation to gameplay. There are new robots that are actually kind of cool but get stale after a while. The best use of them is where Wrench hijacks one and started blasting. There's a spider drone that can fly but for some reason can't perform takedowns on enemies like the normal one can. And there's a proximity thing that helps you locate things and actually requires you to use one of your brain cells, unlike the entirety of Legion. These features are all quite neat. That only makes me wish they were in the base game. Apart from that, it's obviously just the same as Legion. A shitty combat system, mediocre parkour, and shitty stealth. One thing I would like to mention are the takedown animations. In Legion, there are different takedown animations depending on the character you're using and the direction you're coming from. Like from behind, they would like snap the neck of enemies or kick them in the back or whatever. Wrench and Aiden obviously have the unique takedown animations, but it's like one from behind for each. For Aiden, it's a baton whack kick to the head and then second baton whack. For Wrench, it's a sledgehammer to the genital region and then 2 bonks on the head. These were pretty dope the first time, but after about the 50th time seeing them, the same animation becomes really boring. I didn't think I would have to make an entire section for bugs and glitches, but holy shit, there are a fuck ton of them. Firstly and most annoyingly, there is an audio overlapping and skipping thing.
Some of the best hackers won't want to sign up next.
Is it now? Knock?
Well, either way, this should... Glad you're on board.
This is so blatant and irritating, I don't know how no one noticed it before the game's release. What'll happen is one person will talk, and while they're speaking, someone else will take over, and it just keeps happening until there's no more talking and you don't have a fucking clue what's being said. Luckily, this is only through the Discord calls and not the actual cutscenes. For the most part, the cutscenes are pretty well put together, but there are some glitches sometimes. Also, there's a fuck ton of input lag when you try to access the menus. For example, one time I tried to get to the map and I waited upwards of 10 seconds for it to finally appear. Don't get me wrong, it's not like Cyberpunk level of awful, but it still made me wonder if the game had been tested even once. I didn't know where else to mention this, so I made a small section about it. Progression and upgrades are kind of really bad. Instead of unlocking hacks using tech points like in Legion, you unlock upgrades for side missions. Let me reinforce the definition of side missions. Side missions are optional, not essential to the main story, and shouldn't make that much of a difference to gameplay. However, Bloodline locks most hacks and abilities behind side mission rewards. This doesn't sound that bad, but I've progressed the story as Aiden to the bit where he gets put in a coma. I hadn't completed the available side missions as I was going to do them some other time, not knowing that for the next 4 to 6 hours I wouldn't be able to play as Aiden. Because these missions were specific to Aiden, I couldn't unlock half of the upgrades until he's woken up from his coma. This made the wrench half really difficult, because I couldn't hack some drones, jam enemy weapons, or even use the attract hack. So I only unlocked these abilities after I'd completed the main story, by which point there was no use for them because there were no more missions left to do. This is probably my bad, and I don't know how the player would have been informed that you wouldn't be able to do the side missions without spoiling the story. Speaking of side missions, apart from the ones to unlock abilities and shit, there was no more content. I know it's only a DLC, but the first Watch Dogs DLC, Bad Blood, had so much side content. There was a whole currency system for side missions. For every side mission you completed, you got a couple of points. These points added up to buy cosmetic upgrades and shit. There was investigations and fixer contracts, all kind of shit. Obviously it was very copy and paste, it's Ubisoft, but it was something to do at least. It's also worth mentioning that you get the 2 playable characters in both the campaign and the online modes, which is pretty epic. It means all of the story can be played as Wrench or Aiden. I haven't done it myself, so I don't know if it would improve the experience much or at all. So, what's my score? I'm going to give Bloodline a 7 out of 10. It gives a taste of how good Legion could have been with some actual characters. The price tag is pretty attractive too, it's 12 quid, which is a good price for the amount of content you get. If you want to sink 6 to 12 hours in a nice little DLC, I would recommend it.